And let me know if you can see it okay. Oh. Let me go ahead.
Yes, we see it.
Perfect. Oh, can you still see it okay?
We can.
Nope.
We also see what the brown stuff. Yes, we see the screen.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
For some reason, there we go. Okay. So today I'm going to be talking about one of the more kind of complicated things when it comes to strategizing your marketing to be more proactive instead of reactive, and that's mapping your customer journey. So let's move on here. Desert Creative Group, we're a full service marketing and creative agencies, and our main goal is just to help people grow. And that could be a lot of different ways that they do want to grow in, whether it's revenue goals or increased engagement or launching new revenue streams or whatever the needs might be. And the way we do this is through consulting and guidance. And we also offer services and implementation help, as well as coming in to do custom trainings and offering support to your staff if you want to take control more over your marketing. I'm Janeale Dean. I'm the CEO of Desert Creative Group. I'm an avid outdoor lover. Last month, I shared a picture of me fly fishing, which I love to do, but I also love hiking and kayaking and things like that. And the state that we're in here in Idaho offers so many diverse landscapes that really inspires a lot of who we are and what I do, and just being kind of in tune with our natural surroundings. So you can see the picture there is our beautiful canyon that is right here in our backyard. And then my picture is in the Camas Lily Marsh that's located just north of here. And that actually is one of Microsoft Windows' default backgrounds that they had on one of their Windows version was our Camas Lily Marsh. So it's actually world famous, and a lot of people travel there while it's blooming to see the sea of purple blooms that is there with the mountains in the background. So talking about customer journeys, what exactly is a customer journey and why is it important? So a customer journey is every single touch point that a customer goes through with your company. And the caveat of this is that it should absolutely have no end. There should be no end to your customer journey if you're doing things correctly. And you always are looking for ways to engage and figuring out how your customer is going to be engaging with your company, through which channels, and then what types of content you can provide to lead them through the journey and their experience. The average consumer now is using 10 channels to communicate with businesses. And that's really important to understand, because in this digital age, people are finding your company through ways that you might have not expected, whether it's through Google or through social media or through a news outlet and a press release. So the discovery process is really different than it used to be just even like 10 to 15 years ago. And then the re-engagement is really different as well, because they might follow you on Instagram and on LinkedIn, and they might go to your website regularly to look at blog articles that you might publish there. So there's a lot of intricate kind of processes going on where you're continually re-engaging people. And when you understand what your customer journey is, it helps you plan out the most effective content to deliver to a client along each stage of the journey. And it also the biggest thing with understanding the content to deliver is understanding a correct call to action and what's appropriate for which stage of the journey they're in. So the old style of a customer journey or a sales funnel was this very kind of funnel shape, which was a very linear approach, and it's not accurate anymore to reflect an actual customer journey. And the reason it's not is because with all of these different ways that a person can enter into your experience, it's no longer linear anymore. It has a lot of on-ramps and off-ramps. You have to kind of think about it almost like a Google map where there's 5 different ways to get to a destination, and you don't exactly know which way a customer might take, but you can try to make your best guess, and you can kind of try to predict and lead them through a narrative that you want to lead them to. So each customer's journey is going to look different. And then the biggest thing is we want to shift from conversion-based, which is just looking for an output of a purchase or a sale or gathering a lead. And we want to focus on intent-based marketing and understanding why they're going through the process that they're going through and where their mind's at with it and what they want out of it. And so customers are now 90% of the way through the purchasing process before they're even making direct contact with you. So they go through this awareness, engagement, discovery all on their own, and you need to be able to provide them the tools to do that before they even reach out to you for content. So kind of branching off of what I talked about last month with this made-up nonprofit X, I kind of give you an example customer journey here of something fairly typical and how complicated it can look. So this one, they first discover you on social media, on Instagram. They're perusing, a hashtag post where you can go in and search for a hashtag and see everybody's post on that. So maybe they're interested in history. So they're looking on the History Today hashtag. They discover your post, and then they'll go to your profile, and they like what they see, so they'll decide to follow you. And then that's the end of the journey for that time. Then maybe a few weeks later, they're having a conversation with one of their friends, and they remembered that post about the project that you're operating, and they tell them about it. And that reignites their interest in your brand and your organization and what you're doing. So then they might Google about the project they remembered and read news articles from other sources around, as well as finding on Google a blog post on your organization's website that they also are providing. So then maybe a few weeks later even, they might go to the organization's website to read about their mission and other projects. And then the journey might be ending right there for a time. You don't know how long exactly. But since they follow you on social media, they might see another post come up, a few days later, a few weeks later, or even a few months later that sparks their interest again. And it might be like a social video promo about upcoming events. Then they choose to sign up for email alerts about their event. And then once they get their email in there, then you start to see where you can follow their journey from there, and they see an email about a project in a war-torn nation. And they're kind of interested in learning more about that. So they might research the history of the conflict, and then they decide to want to help, and then they make a monetary donation. So you can see that this journey goes through multiple channels. It goes through multiple time periods. And if we go back to that funnel, it goes through a lot of those processes back and forth. So you can't just funnel them down through one linear path. They go back and forth through the different stages at any given moment, depending on what their needs are and what they're interested in learning. So identifying and creating your path based on behavior. The first and foremost thing that you need to understand when you're starting to map out your customer journey is identifying your audiences. Each particular audience will have special needs. They'll have special things that you're wanting out of them, whether it's specific general public people you're wanting them to be engaged in your organization and make monetary contributions, whether it's partners that you're wanting to bring in on projects and getting them interested in the industry and educating them there. Every single person will have different needs, and then you'll want to provide different audiences, and they'll go about doing business with your organization in different ways. And then you want to put yourself in your audience's shoes. This is the biggest thing. This is kind of what I see marketing in a nutshell as, is putting yourself in somebody else's shoes and trying to give them what they want to inspire them to take action with your business. So if you're looking to support an organization, what path would you take to learn about them and to be inspired about wanting to actually contribute and help? And then also thirdly, you want to look at the data, and that's between installing, the social media tracking codes on your website and seeing the shifts between where they enter in from social media to your website, as well as following them around in the analytics on your website itself to see where exactly they're moving through and what content they're viewing and where they drop off of your website. And then next, email campaigns. If you're sending them emails, what they're responding to, what the call to actions they're following through. They re-enter your website, what they're doing on your website from there. And that helps you identify the journeys that already exist. And then once you can understand the journeys that already exist, you can see if you're not exactly getting the results that you want, or if people are falling off in particular areas, you already can see and know where to go in and actually tailor your content or retool things to make it more effective. So starting to lay out the customer journey, I kind of like thinking about things a little bit more segmented where you can move through a path, but it's not so hard-lined as making it linear. So this is for current behavior, what you're seeing. And you kind of go through where you look at the awareness stage when somebody's just discovering your brand and you're trying to build awareness of what you do, what your mission is, what projects you have going on, to get people to feel passionately about your organization. So you start to ask the questions like, what is the customer thinking or feeling? Why are they there? Why should they care? And this goes back to your marketing strategy like we talked last month. The biggest thing to lead with is why. Why do they care? Why are you doing what you're doing? And really defining those things. So what are they thinking when they start learning about your organization, and what are you inspiring out of them? And then next is, what is the customer's action and intent? So their intent might be to get involved in kind of nonprofits and social changes and social justice to be able to move around and support causes that are important to them. How are they going to do that? And what are the actions that you need to kind of lead them through to make a positive change in the movement as well as in your organization? And then what and where is the buyer researching? Are they Googling for particular things? What are those keywords? What are they interested in knowing? And then how did they get there? How did they discover, like you in that moment? What are those channels that they're moving through to discover you? And then lastly, how will we move the buyer along on their journey to keep us in mind? And you can never force them through their journey. It's always a gentle with us in mind. If we can help lead them through this, how are we going to do that? And then once you kind of discover those things for your awareness stage, then you can say, what's next? And these are just 5 example stages. They can be many more depending on your customer journey and what you're finding out when you're looking at your data. And people can move through these back and forth at any given moment. So the general ones that I like to do are the awareness stage. the nurturing stage, the consideration stage, the decision stage, and the re-engagement stage. And the awareness is your discovery on educating them about your brand. The nurturing is maybe they're interested and they're there, but they're not ready to move forward with a decision, or they're not, looking to necessarily make a consideration. And then the consideration is where they're gathering their research and trying to make the best educated decision, whether it's looking into your spending on how much of a percentage of your money that you take in actually goes towards a cause. Those kinds of things are always weighed when people are giving in to a nonprofit's mission and considering donating money. Is where is that money getting spent? And is that something that I can personally buy off on to feel good about donating my money? And then the decision stage is when you finally convert them over to a decision. And the re-engagement stage is what happens after that. And the re-engagement is the most important part. And this is why I feel the funnels are no longer effective. It's because you don't want them just to be done and converted, and then their re-engagement being an afterthought. It should be a continuous cycle and almost like a circle where you're constantly going through. So the re-engagement stage, like what comes after the decision. So you're looking for them to continually engage with you online and through your different channels, whether that's going to your events, liking and following and sharing your posts online, whether it's continually opening your emails to read about updates on projects, new things, everything like that, or you want them to continue to contribute. So then it goes to brand advocacy, and that also is where they turn into your biggest advocates, recruiting new clients to go through their own customer journey. So that's maybe sharing your message online, telling their friends. If you give them, branded merchandise, them representing that in their circles, things like that they can do to become an advocate for your brand. And that's, just as good as an online review or, word of mouth is more powerful than just a stranger kind of ad popping up where you have to start the discovery process from the very beginning. They already go into it with a level of trust. And then obviously you want repeat conversions where they continue to donate or continue to volunteer or to continue to do whichever you want them to do. And then last but not least, cross-selling opportunities. So that's expanded on the repeat conversions, is where you're educating them on maybe the rest of what your organization does to get them engaged in new ways and multiple touch points throughout your organization. So then once you start to understand their journey, you can start to plan out content and call to actions based on the journeys. So the biggest thing is knowing what to ask when. And with each piece of content you develop, you have to know where exactly it fits into their journey. But it also needs to stand alone, because with how things are discovered now through Google, everything being searchable, social media posts might pop up at certain times depending on the algorithm and how it's being distributed through the channels. You never know exactly if somebody might see it and in an early stage in their journey. So you need to keep that in mind when you're creating certain pieces. If it's through a mass channel like social media, it should be able to stand alone on its own, or lead them to a path where they can learn more information if it is kind of further in the journey. If you have a bold ask, or you want it specifically for established customers, you need to choose a more targeted channel. And this could be if you have a social media group with your current, donors and contributors in there that are a part of that, or if you have an email list that's specifically segmented with those people in mind, you can send targeted content directly to them because you know that they're already educated and well established in your brand. And you need to think of your customer's journey when you're developing call to actions. I kind of like to use the example, like you need to give more than you take. And so just asking for money is not necessarily appropriate and can turn people away. And you're more interested in facilitating long-term relationships and the re-engagement than you are just asking for a one-off conversion of just give us money, please. So keep that in mind. I think that's really important with relationship building. And this isn't just for marketing. Salespeople also use this approach where you're more concerned about the lifetime value of your client than you are just for a transactional based relationship. So moving through kind of with the building your content, I kind of do it in the same structure as the kind of first when you're establishing where they are and their different points of the journey. I kind of lay it out where you can take a piece, so that might be piece one, and then you start answering questions about it. And it's what is the customer thinking or feeling, and what is the desired reaction to this piece of content? And this could be a particular blog post that you're looking on writing and publishing on your website. It could be a video that you're wanting to get produced to talk about your organization as a whole or a specific project you're working on. This could be a whole campaign that you're running to facilitate engagement and action on a specific, niche thing in your market that you're wanting to build up. This could be really any type of content on here that you can answer these questions for. So then you need to identify what stage the content's appropriate for and what's the customer's intent and actions to get here. So if they followed through a journey, where did they discover that piece, and what are the ways that they went about possibly discovering it? Could they find it through Google? Could they just find it through social media? Do you link to it multiple places around the internet? Were you promoting it in person at an event? Or if you have a brick and mortar office or headquarters, was supportive content provided there in person as well? So you kind of need to understand how they got to learning about this particular piece of content and finding it to see it. And then what's the customer's touch point with the business? If they were to respond and move through to the call to action, where would that take place? Would it be to message you on social media? Would it be to go to your website and then continue through the journey from there? So understanding what the next step is and where that needs to take place is really important. And that goes to where your call to action is. So if you're, directing them to your website, or if you're directing them to a donation page to give money, or if you're directing them to a contact page to contact you directly, what's that call to action look like? And which stage do you hope to move them to? Is it the final stage where, you're moving them through the decision process and then hope to re-engage? Or is it moving from discovery to a possible consideration? Or if you've moved them from a consideration and they're no longer active, moving them back to the nurturing stage to rekindle that interest in that relationship. And then why do we feel this will alter the customer journey? So what about this piece, and what about your message and your call to action? Why do you feel that will actually help you move them to the next page? Is it just because you're asking them to, or is it because the content you're providing inspires them to? And that's where it goes to intent, on what's the intent of your customer and what's the intent of you moving them through that journey. So I like to do that through each piece of content that I start to produce. And I know it might seem lengthy and tedious to do, but if you go through these really strong building blocks early on and start to make them a habit as you're producing content, on answering why you're producing it, what you hope to get out of it, and where exactly this will move, you know, your customers through the journey, you start to shift to be where you're not just pumping out marketing content and materials just to get awareness and to get, you know, people listening. You're being really methodical and start to speak to people on a different level on how to do business with you, and you start to train them on what to expect. So if you provide a lot of educational resources, they can start to expect that, and it's not just a transactional thing, they're actually getting more out of it. And it helps really build up a long-term relationship after all, because you're not just being so scattershot with your approach to things and really reactive to what's going on. You're taking the time and the effort to really extend a hand, whether it's digitally or in person, to get to know your customers and to give them what they want to help maximize the relationship as best as you can. So my presentation today, kind of moving through, that's really short. I wanted to leave a lot more time for questions than last time, because this is kind of a heavy piece of building block in this strategy process. So I know there might be a lot of questions on building that kind of effectively. So Masita, if we can move over to the questions and answers.
Hi, yes, absolutely. I will unmute everyone. We will show our face. And there you go. And let's see. Allow to. Okay, I believe everyone is unmuted and you are allowed to speak. So if you have a question, please